So, how has it been? It's been 60 days since we've opened up our terminal in Atlanta, Georgia. So I really wanted to dedicate a video on updating you guys out there on how it's been the last 60 days. I am surprised that I still have hair left on my head. My God, do I want to share my experience with you guys? You need to know what's going on out there, how long things take, the good, the bad, the ugly. So I'm going to talk about everything in this video over here. I'm going to talk about my first 60 days running 3 power units all over the US. I'll talk to you about the rate per mile. I'll talk to you about my struggles that I've had. I'll also talk a little bit about deficit and running at a loss, because I feel like that's very important to talk about that in today's videos, because a lot of people in the US are running at a loss. I'll talk a little bit about the break-even points of where freight rates need to be in order for a trucking company to be able to run a cost per mile analysis. And lastly, I'll talk about our plans, our future plans for Atlanta, Georgia, and being a carrier in the US. So make sure you're watching this video. Without further ado, let's get to it. So here is a video on our first 60 days in the US. So yes, we've opened up a terminal in Atlanta, Georgia, and my God, has every single thing been a struggle for us. So first things first, plating these trucks. Literally 30-45 days in order to plate a truck. I mean, here, maybe because I know the system so well, I mean, we do it in 4 or 5 business days. In the US, maybe because obviously it was our first truck, but the amount of money that you lose on these things. So check this out. You can't do anything until you have your insurance policy in place. So here you are, you have your insurance policy in place. Now the truck is insured. You can't get plates on that truck. Now, imagine if it takes you 30 or 45 days to get plates on that truck. Well, you're paying for that insurance for those 30 to 45 days. And that's crazy, because that's a huge loss. You are not getting your plates, you know, for 30 days, but you have to have your active insurance policy. Nobody's getting an insurance policy without paying ballpark figure about $3,000 a month per truck. Now, if you have 3 trucks that are waiting, that's $9,000 every single month that's going to the garbage. And why is it going to the garbage? Because the plating system takes such a long time. Now, a lot of you fleet owners out there are going to say that no, it's a lot quicker. But my experience, because I had to take Canadian trucks, transfer them into the US, get them swapped out to a US, to make it a US truck, and now I can get it plated, right? So that whole process in itself took like 30 to 45 days. And then they wanted this document and that document, and always constantly wanting documents, wanting proof of our terminal, wanting our lease agreement, so many documents that they wanted. And there really is no like hardcore manual to this. It's like a learn as you go process. So plating, disastrous. I mean, the amount of money that you lose when you're doing this is unreal. The first couple of loads, so we'll talk a little bit about first couple of loads. So the first couple of loads that we did was after our market analysis, we found that, you know, going north, obviously from Georgia, going to Illinois, Wisconsin, Tennessee, going into, you know, the East Coast, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Massachusetts, those were good lanes for us. So those round trip rates, I would say, even though the national average says that it's $2.07 per mile, absolutely not. I don't believe that, not for a second. The national average, I would say, is more around the $1.95 to $2 per mile. And that's really with trying with trying to book good loads off the load boards. I mean, yes, our customers in Georgia, you know, for us to approach them, even though they're our customers, we can only approach them when they do their annual RFPs. And when they do their annual RFPs, they will allow us to bid on their US to US freight, right? So we are stuck with, you know, with working off of these load boards, and you know, a lot of companies are in the exact same situation. We work off these load boards. So the rates per mile probably is more around sitting about $1.95 per mile. Are you running at a loss at that at $1.95? I mean, you're probably hovering over the break-even point, or maybe even losing at that $1.95, $1.85 for sure. Most companies are probably losing money at that stage. What do I think about the US market? So I definitely think that there's so many trucks out there. I mean, US to US, there's a ton of trucks out there, and I feel like it has a lot to do with the way fleets are growing, and they're growing at a crazy pace, and it's unreal how fast these companies in the US are growing. So just an example about us, I mean, it's been 17 years. We grew from, you know, 10 power units to right now we're probably over 100 power units, right? Probably about 110 power units. But it took us 17 years to do that. I know fleets in the US that, you know, that opened up in, I would say, 2010, 11, 12, and they already have 500-600 power units, and it's unreal how fast they grew in the US. So I really feel like there's a lot of trucks in the US. All right, so I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the two biggest struggles that I've had when opening up the trucking company in the US. So number one, the biggest struggle that I had is getting these plates in Atlanta, Georgia. My God, the hoops that I went through. By far, the hardest struggle that I had was getting the plates on the truck. Struggle number two, which I find to be so weird, but it makes sense that brokers do not want to work with new carriers. So you got a new MC, nobody will work with you until it's 90 days old. So they will only work with you if your MC is 90 days old, so it's only after 3 months. Now, there's some brokers out there that don't want to work with you unless you've been in business for 6 months or more. How in the world is a new carrier supposed to book loads if nobody will work with them? And it's literally, everybody was like that. Now, thank God that I had ET Transport in Canada, that they knew who I was, plus all these social media platforms, that they knew who we were, they knew who the company was, so they were okay with giving us the loads. But in reality, I mean, if I think about it, if anybody else was to open up a new trucking company in the US, and we didn't have all this, and if we were just, had 1 or 2 trucks in the US, nobody would work with us. How in the world would we be able to get loads? So a funny thing that happened that I have to share with you guys out there. So the second that we opened up our US DOT and our MC number, the phone that was attached to the DOT and the MC number, that blew up like nonstop. And the two services that hundreds of companies are providing out there is, number one, I didn't know how popular this was, but factoring. Like literally 50, 100 factoring companies called me. They knew the second there was a new activation on an MC number or a DOT number. I don't know how they get this information, but they knew exactly that a new carrier came into the market. I got flooded with phone calls for factoring services, and I also got flooded with phone calls with dispatch services, like non-stop. I would say probably, at least over 100 companies have reached out to me about dispatch services, and another 100 companies that reached out to me for factoring services. And it's unreal. I never knew that this was so popular. So no, we don't need factoring services, and we also don't need dispatch services because we have our own dispatchers. And in all honesty, we have enough reserves to carry us through those 30, 60, or 90 days as people pay in the US. So we don't want to sell our receivables. So our plans in Atlanta, Georgia. So I mean, currently right now we have 4 power units running in the US. So they're providing service from US to US. Our plan is over the next 3 months to increase that to 8 power units, and then from by the end of Q1 of 2024, our plan is to have 10 to 12 power units running in the US. So yes, we're reaching out to our customers in the US, but their annual RFPs, we have to wait for their annual RFPs to happen. So once that annual RFP happens, we can bid directly on the manufacturing goods and not rely so much on these load boards. Now, the good thing about us is that we are paying 65 cents per mile across the board to our drivers in the US. So it doesn't matter if you're in Kentucky, it doesn't matter if you're in South Carolina, North Carolina, get phone calls from everywhere. If you are working for our company, we pay 65 cents per mile, which I hear that in Georgia, it's on the higher end of the pay. Our plan over the next 3 or 4 months is to get involved with as many RFPs as possible. So what we want to do is we want to push on all of our clients in the US. We want to push on annual RFPs, so anything that's moving into or out of Georgia, we want to be a part of that RFP. So that is our plan, a big push on these RFPs and these manufacturing plants, because we want to be less dependent on these load boards and more dependent on our own customers, just like we've built here in Canada. Another thing that we're trying to do is creating awareness for brokers that we are in town and we want to bid on your freight. So definitely a big push on brokers, a big push on all of our social media platforms that we are in the US, we're in Georgia, anything moving in and out of Georgia, we want to be your go-to carrier. So all you freight brokers out there, definitely reach out to us, dispatch@ettransport.ca. We really want to be a part of your bid. If you do have these annual RFPs that you're representing manufacturing plants, we want to be a part of those RFPs. Now remember, we are your connection in Georgia to Canada. So anything moving in and out of Canada from Georgia, please reach out to us. Our plan is to continue to provide excellent service and safe service out there. Number one is safety for us as a company. Our safety score is immaculate. We would like to continue keeping it that way with the addition of Georgia. So we definitely take pride in our safety score. We definitely take pride in our equipment. We take pride in delivering your loads safely and on time. So yes, we will continue to provide that service to the US market. This is episode number 6 in a probably 7-part series. So I've done a video on scouting a location. I've done a video on the realtor selection. I've done a video on how the transportation specialist that I've used. I've also done a video on the insurance company that I've used. So there's a whole series that I've done on opening up a terminal in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you yourself, if you ever want to open up a trucking company in the US, you can just follow my series. You can use the people that I've used. This channel is all about creating awareness and helping you guys out there, to become more successful as truck drivers and owner operators and small fleet owners. So if you're enjoying this content, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and I will catch you in my next video.